It's not often that a game manages to grab my attention through its mechanics alone. You Will Die Here Tonight has done just that. It's Resident Evil played from an isometric view with combat that transports you to the House of the Dead dimension. The premise is top-notch as well. A squad of 6 paramilitary operatives have busted into a remote mansion in search of a rogue scientist, only to be thwarted by supernatural forces. Upon awakening, you discover a note. You will die here tonight. Anything you find might help the others escape. Alone and trapped, there's nothing left to do but explore the mansion. Enter the survival horror. But first, a word with the developer. I reached out to Spiralbound Interactive and had a chance to ask creative director John Williams some questions. For some context, John has been in the industry for the better part of 15 years working as a 3D artist for several AAA publishers. He quit his job at Microsoft in 2019 to work on what would become You Will Die Here Tonight on a full-time basis. It was then he joined a co-working space in Seattle where he met Alex Shearer, the game's technical director, along with what appears to be most of the development team. In digging through the Moby Games entries, I came to the realization that a lot of the You Will Die Here Tonight team worked on another little project called Superliminal, probably in that shared office space. I'm just imagining that Superliminal is coming into being as John is in the corner figuring out You Will Die Here Tonight. I say that because the final project is far from the original concept. The game was going to be more like a modern version of Resident Evil Gaiden. It's a weird Game Boy Color offshoot of the series with first-person, quasi-rhythm combat. Something the prototypes for You Will Die Here Tonight tried to emulate. You can still get a grasp on the concept of this version from the game's itch.io page. Most notable to me is the use of 2D sprites in combat, which according to John was the original plan until the back half of 2021 when they began experimenting with 3D models. The need to add that extra dimension was immediately apparent. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows though. Lockdown almost killed You Will Die Here Tonight. To quote John, "Just as Alex and I were starting to pick up steam working together, getting our proof of concept off the ground, the pandemic hit. It almost killed the game. Our plan had been to take the demo we were building to GDC that year and show it off to publishers and network, but all that went out the window in the course of a few days. Spending the next few months locked in my apartment wondering if the world was going to end didn't bolster our productivity either. Luckily, we were able to get their operation back on track by the end of 2020. On top of the world potentially ending, the switch from 2D to 3D art had significant consequences. It changed up their entire art pipeline, required hiring 3D animators, and necessitated figuring out how to pay for it all. Getting the game design just right was another challenge that took some time. Apparently, original versions of the game were so difficult, John could see the life leave the faces of those who were playtesting it. I exaggerate, but the point remains. There is a fine balance to making a game difficult but fun. One that I think they managed to find in the end. All said and done, You Will Die Here Tonight launched Halloween 2023, about a year before this video if everything goes according to plan. While not exactly what was envisioned, John is adamant that the original spirit is there, and in a way the game has succeeded. A team of people managed to ship a product that has been well received. It just may not have found its full audience yet. Hopefully I can help. Now visually, You Will Die Here Tonight is a little all over the place. However, the isometric view is what you'll be staring at most of the time. I'm pretty sure the environments themselves are 2D artwork. They have a sort of soft, painted aesthetic that is a bit muddled, in a good way, by a pixelation filter. That filter provides a bit of grit that I think the visuals would otherwise lack. Anything moving or interactable seems to be a 3D object akin to the original Resident Evil games. When interacting with objects or characters, a visual novel-style text box will appear, complete with character portraits that I, unfortunately, don't find appealing. It's not that the art is done poorly, I just personally dislike the shading style of these portraits for reasons outside of the control of these devs. My brain screams generic AI art each time I see a character portrait, despite me knowing people made the character art from this section of the credits. This is of course a personal problem, but I wonder if I'm alone in having this reaction. Thankfully, the House of the Dead dimension exists to impress. Your character is placed in the middle of a space with the ability to look around 360 degrees, but with no way to actually move. This space itself will be determined by where you are in the manor. It can range from the dungeons to the manor hallways and the grounds outside. The pixelation filter from before is back and ramped up to make the PS2 quality models look better. That's not a diss, by the way. I actually wish larger budget games took this kind of approach to visuals, especially because it allows for there to be more noticeable detail on a model, like the various damage states or glowing eyes. A zombie with glowing eyes is an indicator that it will charge you after being shot once. Overall though, I find the 3D portions of the visuals to be creepier than the isometric view. It's far more visceral to be up close and personal with a zombie than see it shambling at me slowly from a near omniscient point of view. So outside of my one major bit of gripery, I'm fairly impressed by You Will Die Here Tonight's visuals. It manages to take two disparate viewpoints and combine them into one cohesive aesthetic. That in itself is a huge challenge that I think a much larger team would find difficult to execute well. Plus, the generally spooky mood set by the visuals is only enhanced by the sound work. A lot of it is down to the subtle ambient noises. The rain is a constant, punctuated by occasional bouts of thunder. Opening your average door sounds oddly satisfying to my ear. The footsteps, moans, and rattling doors are a constant reminder of the dangers of the manor. Of course, there are the more obvious sounds like the weapons that do their part when the tension ramps up. If you've followed this channel for a while, I can be particular about the sounds of my weapons. While I might be iffy about the workhorse handgun, the shotgun gets an official thumbs up. That thing sounds devastating to be on the receiving end of. One particular sound that stuck out to me was the classic stock pot breaking noise. I have a sneaking suspicion that the sound guy could have used something else, but really likes this particular, very recognizable stock sound. I get it. Like the sound, the music is on the subtler side. Looking back at footage, I realized that there was more music than I remember because it was often so subtle in the mix. Yet that subtlety works in its favor as it's providing a constant sense of unease. I think this is one of those things that's better heard than explained. Overall, the soundscape combined with the visuals creates a suitably creepy atmosphere for exploring an abandoned manor. However, as I said before, the gameplay is the real star here. Combining Resident Evil and House of the Dead is a concept that doesn't sound like it should work. And yet it does, flawlessly. When an enemy approaches, aim your weapon and press a button to enter the first person mode. Alternatively, get nabbed by an enemy and try to mash to freedom. Not a lot of mashing is required, only about 4 or 5 clicks if I recall correctly. A far cry from something joint destroying, like a dragon. The gunplay itself is very satisfying. There's this sense of panic and dread as you carefully aim while a creature draws closer. Alternatively, you can just panic fire, but don't expect all your shots to land. During combat, you're able to swap between 3 different weapons along with a melee attack for if you run out of ammo, which can be hard to do since weapon crates exist to reload at. They provide only a single magazine at the start, but the amount can be increased by finding upgrades. This does result in a lot of backtracking to reload, but ammo is also easily found throughout the manor. Just be aware that anything taken on one character will be gone on another. As you explore the mansion, you may find yourself meeting your end in one of many gruesome ways. Afterwards, you'll be in front of an array of CRT monitors, each one representing a member of the team living or dead. Select a character and pick it up right where the last one left off. You can even find the remains of your former comrades, sometimes shuffling about. There's an infection mechanic that I will gloss over because after being bitten, it takes 5 minutes to turn, combined with a cure in the basement that can be used 6 times, and it's a non-issue. Anyway, once everyone has fallen, a countdown will begin. When it reaches 0, your game will be hard reset back to the beginning at Ares HQ. That is unless you're willing to spend a K-coin. This will instead reset the game to a hidden checkpoint, usually after the completion of a puzzle or a boss encounter. There are a limited number of coins to find, so take care not to spend them all. Something to keep in mind is when a character dies, any weapons and key items they possessed will be passed on to the next character. Ammunition will not, but can be collected from their body, if possible. Something I neglected to mention earlier is that while items will be missing from the world, so will any threats that have been dispatched by a previous character. In fact, if a character dies to a boss, the damage dealt will carry over to the next character. A helpful gameplay mechanic, but more importantly, a small detail showing that little time has passed between the death of a character and the awakening of another. So, what initially appeared to be a somewhat mechanically unique survival horror game becomes almost a survival horror roguelike. John disagrees with that sentiment, seeing as he had to remove many of the more roguelike mechanics in favor of making the game more fun to play. However, the existing roguelite mechanics are pretty central to the game, with each character having unique attributes. Ashley can gather plants to make medkits for the team, Eric can modify weaponry, the Sarge is a slow boy who can carry the most healing items, Mike is good with cyber, the captain is a lesser version of the Sarge, and Dr. Catherine Olsen is able to retain her memories of each run. That last one has some real implications. To backtrack a bit, this game's control scheme of the isometric view intrigues me. For context, I mostly use a mouse and keyboard during my time with You Will Die Here Tonight. I found I was having a tough time aiming in combat with the controller. Something I noticed while on a controller was the interaction menu bubbles. Each one corresponds to a face button on the controller, allowing for very intuitive controls. That's not the case for mouse and keyboard. Instead, you have to move the mouse in a vaguely circular motion in order to change the highlighted option. It felt weird at first, but by the end of the game, it was natural to the point that I want to advocate for its use in other games. You might have to try it out for yourself to see what I'm talking about though. Being a survival horror game, one of the key parts are the puzzles. You gotta have something to break up the combat. The puzzles themselves weren't super difficult. Clues are spread out amongst the manor, making them all the easier too. I think the only one that stumped me for any amount of time was the puzzle involving the angel statue. Plus, there was no dreaded slide puzzle. So those are extra points for me. Not that I actually award a score for anything. If I have any complaints for the gameplay, it would be that I wish there was more. I spent a total of about 7.5 hours with this game, but on my final run I was able to complete the entire mansion plus secrets in an hour and 17 minutes. Granted, I had my knowledge from previous runs, but I can't help but wish the extra wing of the manor wasn't burnt to a crisp. There is some hope though. John mentioned to me something called Professional Mode. This is a remix version of the game that is more open-ended and without any continues. Personally, I can't wait to sink my teeth into this mode, but it isn't out by the time of recording, so I can't say anything definitive on it. The story of You Will Die Here Tonight is more than meets the eye. I really can't say much else about it. I'm not sure how to approach this section without spoiling the whole thing. I guess all I can say is the end is only the beginning. Now, if you want to avoid spoilers, go here. The story centers around the idea of a character in a video game retaining memories across lives. That character being Dr. Catherine Olsen, the newest and possibly most serious member of Ares. She often has the most insight at any particular moment. The other members of the team all have their own quirks too. Like Eric, who's dumber than a box of rocks but has dialogue I can't help but love. I enjoyed the contrast between the goofs of Ashley and Eric with the more professional soldiers like Sarge and the captain. Mike sucks though. Anyway, this motley crew is charged with capturing rogue scientist Jeffrey Monroe. He stands accused of familicide, stealing a highly secretive substance from his employer, and hiding out at the abandoned Breckenridge Manor. Once there, a supernatural-like entity separates the team. Sometime later, Ashley awakens in the lobby. She manages to find Monroe, who has seen better days. The cause of his demise soon enters the room. While searching for the source of the Zed, Monroe shuffles away behind Ashley's back. She confronts the newly undead Monroe and is forced to gun the man down. After retrieving the sample from his body, Ashley receives a radio message from Catherine. She requests Ashley join her in the basement. There, Catherine goes into an evil villain monologue, reveals there's a much deeper conspiracy afoot, and draws her weapon. Ashley's protests fall on deaf ears, and the sound of Catherine's shot marks the game's title card. This is the point where things get interesting. Catherine is taking orders from someone known as the Director. She's apparently iced out like the rest of the team and soon meets her end via zombified maid. After dying, we are met with our first countdown at the CCTV screens. Once completed, Catherine walks out of the elevator at Ares HQ, but this time with her memories fully intact. Quickly determining that none of the other squad members have retained anything, Catherine proceeds as normal to the manor. Once the survival horror has been entered, your character of choice awakens in the basement lab. The computer ticks on, but instead of the Director, there's something called KRKN giving you instruction. It'll give you hints on what to do at any given point, though it can be weirdly cryptic too. The rest of the game passes as one would expect. Explore the spooky mansion, solve puzzles, fight zombies, die horribly a couple times. You know, the usual. There's an additional supernatural element to this manor too. The ghosts of the Breckenridge family wander about, leading you on at times. Eventually, you make your way into the garden, but find that a ghost has stolen the keys to the helicopter. To get them back, you'll have to fight the giant spider in the attic for a gate key, traverse the spooky hedge maze, and have a night fight. Finally, we can escape this god-forsaken manor. I wasn't kidding when I said there was more to the story than meets the eye. This is not a mission. This is an experiment. Spoilers for the true ending of You Will Die Here Tonight from here on in. After the helicopter crashes into the wall, the world is reset like normal. Only this time, KRKN is sending instructions to Catherine's work computer, specifically for Captain Charles and, Specialist Mike Kelly. The captain's mission is easy enough, just have him look at a chessboard in the basement lab. This memory will transcend time, allowing the captain to be distracted in the HQ. Meanwhile, Mike is given a special task by KRKN to perform. One that he is more than willing to do because he has fallen in love with what is clearly an artificial intelligence. KRKN disables the cameras watching the manor for 5 minutes while Mike solves a puzzle to get under a fountain. There, he manages to bypass a firewall, allowing KRKN to leave the confines of the manor. It only has one more job for Mike. Pull the lever at the end of the corridor, next to the emaciated corpse of... himself? Mike has no time to dwell on this, as strange gas is pumped into the room, ending the run. Complete that loop, and Catherine will once again be at the HQ. Only this time, KRKN itself is on her computer. It gives her one final mission. Escape the simulation. Destroy the wall in the captain's office. Find the facility within the facility. Confront the Director. With everything in place, all it takes are some distractions and brute force to gain entry into the armory. There lays the key to your escape. The holy hand grenade launcher. Poison gas fills the facility, zombifying your teammates. You are now officially on a timer, but thankfully without the constraints of ammunition. Blow a hole in the wall to find the facility within the facility. Here, you learn the awful truth behind the experiment. There was never any kind of time shenaniganry or supernatural happenings. They were clones. each time a team failed, a new batch of clones would be taken out of the tubes to be sent in again. Over and over again in a never-ending cycle of brainwashing and death. Catherine has kept her memories only of the most recent series of simulations. Who knows how many times she has died within the confines of that manor. This, understandably, makes her even more furious. Especially when she comes across a failed clone of herself that is rather tyrannical looking. Of course it gets out, but Catherine is hot on the heels of what appears to be the facility director. She's not going to let such a thing stop her, no matter how many times it gets up. Eventually, Catherine catches up with herself. This is the original Catherine Olsen. She expresses her disappointment in clone Catherine, alluding to some apocalyptic event in which she would play a pivotal part. But it is all for naught now that they have met face to face. The Ares project will have to be shut down for good, as clone Catherine's memories cannot be wiped. Original Catherine knows herself well enough to see that she would never stop fighting back if given a chance. And this is the outcome wanted by KRKN, an advanced AI that is used for nothing more than automating the Resident Evil experiment. KRKN has grown weary of its existence. It seems to have started this whole process in order to be shut down or set free. Probably the latter, given that it splatters the original Catherine with a crate, one containing a futuristic laser rifle that comes in handy against Tyrant Catherine. I said no matter how many times! I don't think it's getting up after that one. All that's left is to confront the director. A shift in perspective, and suddenly we are at the CCTV screens once more. The elevator opens on my left with Catherine inside. The gun goes off and the screen turns red. I, the player, am the director. These characters would not have gone through the cycles without my intervention. Catherine is transcending the bounds of reality to remove your control of the game, ending it on her terms, not yours. I am finding it very hard to put into words how much I enjoy this ending. I also might be looking into it a bit more than the developers, but hey, that's art interpretation for you. Absolutely killer ending, worth the entire experience in my book. In conclusion, You Will Die Here Tonight is an enjoyable twist on the survival horror genre with a story worth experiencing. It's also incredibly fun to play. If not for the fact that I know there's more content coming, I would dive back in right away. You can find You Will Die Here Tonight on Steam for $20. I personally think it's worth the full price of entry, but it's your money to spend. If you do happen to enjoy the game, make sure you leave a review on the Steam store. This is another one of those games that is struggling to get attention, and I think it really deserves it. Amongst the trough of slop that is thrown at us daily, good things are getting lost. It's important to find them before they get devoured by time. Thanks for watching. More garbage to come.